Thank you, Valerie. So, me one more time. I promise it's going to be the last time. And I'm going to talk not about science now. So in the moments where Jennifer and I are not busy with reducing the perfumer's palette, we actually try to do something to protect the perfumer's palette. And that's going to be part of the aspects here. I also want to use the opportunity, because I think we do that rarely enough, that we think, Cordula did it, and I think it was good. We have to thank the members who are actively engaged in our task forces, because what we do only works with a contribution from the members, with getting the sounding board of the members, getting the impact of the members. So you feed us, and then we are only a channel to bring that to other groups, and in this case, I think this is a very important aspect when it comes to the topic I'm going to address in the next minutes. I borrowed this slide, I never did it. It goes beyond my capability of doing things graphically. But it shows the complexity of our supply chain, and the complexity of our supply chain can sometimes be also a hindrance, because people don't really understand who these fragrance people are. Specifically, when you come for the first time into international groups, and then you say, well, I'm for the fragrance industry, so what do you do? And where are you positioned? Because typically, there's only producers of raw materials and end products, but that there is B2B in the between is not always understood, and specifically, a creative industry like ours. So bringing this, making this graphically understandable, I think is very important. And I will come back to the slide why we needed to make people understand where the fragrance and the flavor industry, by the way, are positioned in the supply chain. We also talked about that for us it's essential that we have a good understanding of the materials in use. And we call that the perfumer's palette. So we bother our members with the surveys, the volume of use survey in this case, so we get the feedback, which materials are in use, at which amounts. And as you can see here, and that's going to be the focus of today, naturals are very important in the palette. And I know from my perfumery background, which is some years ago, that they can be really the distinguisher. So we need to have a focus on natural, we need to understand the naturals. And this is going to be the scope of today's presentation. Some of our naturals, and that somehow links to what we have heard right now, are wild species. And to my understanding, they are of tremendous importance for the industry. And now, while I present this, people are going around, I think they've already started, and they allow you to smell 3 materials. And now my other colleague, Jennifer, will start distributing something to make you experience not only the smell, but in this case, the taste of one of these materials. So we have here oud, we have tonka, and we have frankincense. And they are in the focus of our activity that I'm going to allude to a little bit now. But why? And again, this is a good opportunity for me to also make a link to the presence and the impact of the perfumers. So we gave them the list of the 1,000 materials, the naturals we have, and we did a check internally which are specifically under threat, which are widely sourced, and then we got feedback from the perfumers, which of them are specifically important in perfumery, so that we put our focus here, so helping to get priorities. And this is where we need the creative people, because they are the ones who can tell us. So CITES, everybody knows what CITES is. I have 3 options here. And unfortunately, I couldn't do a Mentimeter. So is it Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, Chasing International Trends in Exclusive Sense, or Coffee is the Essential Solution? I help you. It's coffee, because I'm in between you and the coffee break. So it's coffee is the essential solution, eventually. So let's get into what it is. CITES at a glance, and I know it's maybe because I'm a scientist, I have the tendency to put too many words on it, and even so, the slide has already been rectified by my colleague Jennifer. It's still very wordy, but in the end, we are dealing with an international treaty nearly as young or as old as IFRA, and we have the same focus, we have the same goal, because we want to ensure that these materials remain in trade. We know, we understand they are under threat, but the goal is to keep them in trade, so to protect that they continue to be available in the market. It's a complicated structure, it's an international structure, and in this case, you really need to understand how it works. And I tried on 2 slides to make us understand how it works. The point is that they are also working with annexes, and if your material is on Appendix 1, it's already threatened with extinction, and there's actually no trade possible anymore under very limited conditions. What mostly is what we have to look at is Appendix 2, and some of our materials are there, so they are not yet threatened with extinction, but trade has to be regulated to prevent this to happen. And then you have Appendix 3, where one country has already decided to take measures in place, and then the structure looks at it in the future. What's also important is annotations. That is actually the language used to describe which part of the species is under the regulation of CITES. And the regulation of CITES, as you might know, requires you to provide certificates when you want to bring this material through the supply chain. And that is work and labor intensive, but it's needed. But when you define these annotations, the question is, how do you exactly describe what really needs to be certified, and how do you prevent that other materials or other products in the supply chain do not need to be recertified because they are simply using what was already certified. And when we started this discussion, we used this supply chain chart that I showed you before. So making CITES understand, well, we are using essential oils, and once they are certified, and we use them in our fragrance mixtures, which are then sold to the finished product producer, why do you ask us to certify the fragrance mixture again if we can demonstrate that the raw material was already certified? Can we have exemptions? And that was one of the key discussions we had. But if you get this understanding, then you need to bring this into language. So that's the challenge. And that is a structure you have to deal with. So there is a conference of the parties every 2 to 3 years where the decisions are taken. So you need to ensure that a good proposal is brought there and finds a majority support. The group also reviews implementation and effectiveness, but the major thing for us to follow is which species are going to be approved to be listed, or which appendices are going to be updated, is there any changes, and which annotation language is going to go along with the listing. They have a management committee, standing committee. There you have to ensure that you are on working groups because they establish working groups. And last but not least, there's a plants and an animals committee which meet and then in detail discuss all the details of the species, what is happening, what is the threat that is out there. And that is where you have to start work. So what have we been doing at IFRA? How could we engage? And I have to say, whatever we do as IFRA, we also do for the flavor industry, because these restrictions are the same in both supply chains. They don't differentiate. So we decided some years ago to become observer at CITES level, and we got the status. And we are maintaining it, but also to maintain the status, you have to be regular participant in meetings. If you miss some meetings, you lose your observer status, so you have to start from scratch. So we are an accredited observer to CITES, and we are a member of the Annotations Working Group since several years. The first focus, because these materials were already under discussion, that was rosewood and Bulnesia samentui. You don't smell them today. By the way, did everybody get the chocolate? Yeah. Good. All right. Gift from IFRA for free. You can take it. Well, it's part of the cost of the registration, but don't matter. So what did we do? We worked with the leading states on the language and the annotations. And even if it sounds extremely boring, the outcome that fragrance mixtures are now considered as finished products exempt from certification need is tremendous in the industry. The number of certificates that would have been needed are tremendously reduced. We are not reducing the level of protection because that happens at the level of the essential oil. They need to have their certification. I don't have it on the slide, but we are also discussing, what about derivatives? What about when you take essential oils and then you do some modifications? Do they still need to be certified, or can you consider them as a modification out of certification? So that's part of the activities we look at, and it's a nice hobby horse. It can keep you very busy, but once you understand, then you can actually find a way to manage. And I have to point out this little picture over there. If you recognize this young, energetic person, it was a picture in Bangkok. It was my first COP meeting. It's actually me. Maybe I should have done it a little bit bigger, so time flies. I think I have more hair. Anyway, let's move to the next slide. We have two focus materials where I have a little bit more details here. One is tonka. Tonka is already listed, but so far it is the wood. So you have that down in this corner here. And the annotation, so tonka is listed and the annotation specifies it's the trading of the wood in all forms. But we know discussion has already taken place at CITES level that the bean eventually should also be listed. And that affects us. The reason is the same. I mean, they cut the trees to export the wood. These beans grow on the trees. So if the trees disappear, we have a problem for the trading of the beans. But now the question is, if you're trading the beans, if you take the beans away from under the trees, do you negatively impact the regrowth of this already endangered species? And that's where we have to step in. That's where we have to show, if we can, that the collection of the beans, the way it is done, that does not negatively impact the regeneration, which we all need. And there's a study going on, but I refer to it on the next slide. And the second species we are looking on or working on is frankincense. There's also knowledge, there's overharvesting, the very slow regeneration, habit loss. Unfortunately, it also grows in some very dangerous regions where it's actually quite difficult to get an understanding on the trade and the supply chain. So we are also here working and supporting with other partners, and that leads me to the concluding work. This work is done also and best done with partners, and one of the partners is going to speak after the coffee break, because we are working on this as well as on tonka with UEBT. You have to combine, and you have to combine forces, work together so that you have the right contacts, you can talk to the right people, and then we can then feed in the right information again back into the CITES process so that the best decisions are taken to hopefully ensure that these materials remain available to our perfumers. And with that, I'm at the end of my intervention. Thank you.